a lot of it that I'll focus on is probably a little bit more on the migration that we undertook, and then end a little bit around the our uh, data that we're gleaning from OpenAthens and sort of what insights we're hoping to get out of those. Um, One of our collections librarians was going to participate in the presentation today, but unfortunately they've had something that came up and they weren't able to. So we won't be able to look at sort of that more day-to-day experience. But I did. Hopefully, folks were able to have an opportunity to look at the article that they had written. Um, so yeah, we'll go a little bit about the migration, how we made that decision, how we migrated, some of the lessons that we learned there, and then a touch on the day to day, but and really around the insights that we're really hoping that we're going to start to glean out of having that Open Athens data paired with sort of user attributes and that sort of thing. Okay, so one of the main motivators was certainly the difficulties that we found in managing IP authentication. So I came to UBC probably fiscal year 14, 15, and it was just always a constant wheel to be trying to react to changes that UBC IT network services were doing. They were, breaking up IP ranges, where in the past we would know that, 100% of the users under there were authorized users. We want to remain compliant with license agreements. And then, IT network services has this other mission where they have to provide network services for third parties. So, some business or research group that, is just renting office space from UBC. They would repurpose an IP address. We would find out about it months later, and then we, had to go through this process of um, breaking, what would have been an IP, one single IP range, single out that one or extract out that IP address, and then go through the process of updating all of our publishers with, the new IPs. Um, Tried, every type of angle to try to get more involved in those network discussions. Very limited success with network services. Um, and then, we did a sort of a analysis, and really it was probably taking us 2 FTE every year for about 3 months. So it's like, this is the summer project that, we go back through the last academic year and, September to April, all the things that had changed. We had patched a whole lot of holes. Now it was time to go and update all of the um, uh, 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 publishers, and essentially 2 FTE for 3 months. Just not a great use of resources. And again, there were some real concerns about us remaining compliant with our license agreements. Like, are we fully aware of what network services is doing out in hospitals, something like that, right? So, so there was a lot of concerns, and so it started to push us through into what else is a possibility. We were also working with UBC Identity Access Management and starting to create a number of business rules that would govern our EZProxy authentication process. So, that was again another area where, perhaps we weren't as diligent about being compliant with our license agreements. So we already had a whole lot of work that was underway around defining specific user groups within the UBC community. Uh, Also in 2017, I attended it's the Acquisitions Institute held at Timberline Lodge, and at that conference, mini conference, I saw a presentation by Linda Van Kuren, and so she's a librarian at Georgetown Medical Library, and she presented on their library's yeah, implementation of OpenAthens, and really interesting because their motivation was around ambiguing. Yeah, and no, that's the wrong word. Uh, um, uh, they had negotiated license agreements with publishers based on an FTE of the larger Georgetown University. But of course, the medical libraries was a subset of that population. And they couldn't, it was a way for them to ensure to those publishers that only the medical center users would be able to access. So Open Athens was a way for them to uh, um, uh, um, restrict access to just a certain user group and save money as well in that process. So I saw something come in through the chat.
Yeah, there's a question there. It says why open Athens rather than Shibboleth?
That is a good question. Mm, And I think I would have to get back to you on that answer. I know we have uh, Shibboleth incorporated, but it could be the catalog and other aspects of Open Athens that allows us to yeah, there's definitely some advantage there. But yeah, something that I'd probably have to get back to you. Um, yeah, local IT support versus hosted solution. Um, Jacqueline, I understand that. Um, Yeah, that's actually a good point. Hosted solution was definitely something that factored into that decision-making process, and that's sort of coming back to me now. Um, again, our experience with IT and just having the IP or lack of communications around the IP changes, it definitely wasn't um, uh, um, the least we have to rely on another department, I think, is, and having that uh, uh, um, uh, ability within our own hands is probably the choice that we would make. So so we started to prepare what would it take? Yeah, I should actually just back up as well. In 2019, the summer of 2019, I had a chance to visit Georgetown Medical Library. Go on site, see how they had implemented Open Athens, what that experience looked like, and also understand from their point of view, what um, uh, uh, how they were utilizing some of the data that they were extracting out of Open Athens as well. So, yeah, it was really exciting. Definitely cemented on my side the path that we wanted to take, and some of the enhancements that we were going to explore as well. So early 2020, we created an Open Athens implementation planning team. Uh, and this is really where we started to get a sense of the width and breadth of what this undertaking would be for us. Started to document all the criteria and considerations that we'd have to keep in mind for the migration. Came up with a timeline on how we would conduct this. And then, the pandemic set in, I think end of March there. And it was a real well, we all went through it, so I don't think I need to explain the impacts that it was. But for UBC, nearly a complete pivot to online access in all aspects of it. And in the past, some analysis had been, remote. EZProxy was about 50% of our usage traffic, while IP authentication was the remaining. Um, and now that IP authentication was next to zero, right? So it was a significant drop off. And then, getting into EZProxy, it was not seamless. It wasn't an easy aspect. That journey beginning at the library homepage. We did acquire Lean Library as a browser extension at one point. Well, we still have it actually. The nice thing about that is that it would work no matter what the backend was, either EZProxy or OpenAthens. So that was good. I'm just gonna take a look at unless we have to rely on another department. Yes, that true. Absolutely. Looking at potentially migrating to OA plugins plugs into the institution requires only a single setup. Yeah, with campus IT and then handles platform access. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yes. Each publisher and that I recall that we had a couple of resources at that time that were just SHIB. I don't re they could have been for some reason a bell is ringing that they were sort of a business school financial resource. Yeah. Um, but regardless, yes, we had to make that change. So we ended up acquiring it a year before the official launch. We had to do a privacy impact assessment, so make sure that in BC we have the FIPA legislation. Um, uh, uh, um, so we have to ensure that no personally identifying information is being passed through over into Open Athens or the publishers, and that obviously was uh, fine, and we had that approved. It was a huge project, and the more that we would be able to test things out through not a sandbox, but an actual integration would have we felt was probably a good way to go if we could afford it. And actually, I also recall that leading up into that September, we had some e-resources that would no longer work with EZProxy, and I suspect that. Well, suspect. I want to say that it was Safari, maybe O'Reilly Books. That platform was refusing to work with EZProxy. They wanted a SHIB. And the nice thing is that we have the PIA that has been done for Open Athens. And so now, as long as, whatever new platform that we get, as long as we can integrate with them through OpenAthens, we're fine on the privacy side of things. So we don't have to go back through another PIA. So we started the planning phase preparation for change. The pandemic had, really set us back, obviously, on that first phase. But looking back through my notes, I see, we had a communications timeline set out for library staff for that fall. We started to document some of the discovery and authentication pathways that we knew would have to change from EZProxy over to OpenAthens. And then, and we started to get organized in that sort of IT project sort of aspect of a stakeholder analysis, getting some of those user stories set, a bit of the requirements gathering. Of course, environmental scan, we were able to connect with a number of libraries that had OpenAthens already, and really learn from them, as well as create a risk register. Um, but one of the main things that we always had decided was we will have a change management officer to help us, and we were able to get somebody that had worked with UBC IT in other areas, and so it was really helpful. We thought we were prepared, but this person came in and really was able to identify areas where we had not been as prepared as what we had thought. So, we created a number of plans with subgroups that sort of tackled it. A change management plan, and I really cannot say enough good things about that change management plan, just to help us get organized in how we were going to communicate, when we were going to communicate, what we were going to communicate. It was a real success from my point. Um, See, e-resource enablement plan, we were able to, identify some of the integrations that needed to change, browsing, libkey, Lean library I mentioned before, and then some of those customized proxy linking. Instructional materials plan, we were able to, some of those instructional elements that would require conversion to OpenAthens, RefWorks, Zotero, Google Scholar, some of those things as well. Um, yes, if there's any plans that folks are interested here, I got to say that our documentation was really well. So yeah, just reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to share what we can. Um, we also went in through that planning phase of an EZProxy, sort of winding that down, how we're going to do that, an IP address delisting plan with publishers, all of that sort of stuff. And also, we started on, but this didn't finish till afterwards, but developing an application that staff who troubleshoot e-resource issues or user account issues would be able to look someone up and see what their status was, and whether that was something that could provide an answer into why they were having an access issue. Um, So I hope folks were able to see some of the public facing documentation that we created. I got to say one thing that this exercise, shouldn't call it an exercise, large scale project allowed us to become a lot more organized. When we started to document what was out on all of the various websites, for the library branch websites, we saw that. A lot of sections were out there about how to log into EZProxy, or how to, proxify a link. And really it allowed us to say, hey, you know what, like this is a single spot. You should just link to this page. That way, if there are changes in the future or updates, we just make the change in the one spot, and we don't have to worry about this stuff sort of becoming out of date because we're not even aware of it. Was there a dedicated project manager? That is an excellent question and a huge lesson learned. No, there wasn't. And this was definitely something that we, took away, lesson learned that, we cannot have, in the future going forward this size of a project without somebody that's dedicated to ensure that all aspects of it stay on track. It really, as we became closer and closer to launch date, you have all of your regular activities that you're doing, right? So it's very easy to forget that, oh, I have to actually, do these project related tasks. So yes, it was absolutely a huge lesson for us to take away that the change management officer has huge rewards attached to that, and then having a specifically a project officer dedicated, project management officer dedicated to that helps make sure we hit all of our targets. Prepared for the worst, we hope for the best. And I got to say that again, I would relate it to the change management plan that we put together. But we had almost zero complaints from library, right? So librarians, library staff, they were well informed. They had the material that they needed to communicate changes out to our library users. And for me personally, I got very low complaints from faculty. And really once I explained why we were making these changes, they were totally fine with it. And surprisingly, we even got a few compliments. So that was nice. Um, Again, I wish Ryan was here. We could go into a little more on the day-to-day operations. Open Athens is not without its issues. Hopefully that, you've had a chance to be able to look at his article. It really has, the one thing is that the technology is a little bit opaque, if and hard to get up to speed, I would say, to understand. And then, they do become fairly significant issues to uh, um, try to solve. Um, well, I did put in AI. That's for people who've read that article, and I think it's somehow ironic that complex technology is creating more problems, but we're hoping that more complex technology can help solve those complex technology problems. Um, so I'll just end here a little bit on a new data set that we're trying to understand and look into. So one of my drivers, as I had explained, has always been to get that user side data. Counter doesn't tell a story. I've been involved for a number of years of helping the user or the university librarian put together a Senate report. And we say, hey, last year UBC student, staff, faculty downloaded 9 million articles and ebook chapters. Well, what does that mean? It's a big institution. There's no context there. There's no resonance created from that. Um, we did experiment a little bit about an EZProxy proof of concept project where we matched EZProxy logs with some user UBC user attributes. Of course, everything is anonymized. So we knew it was possible, right? So, but EZProxy was just remote, didn't include the IP authentication data. So Now that everything goes through OpenAthens, we have usage data extracted via API. UBC IT matches that with user attributes and then provides anonymized data for us. Very early days. I know our discovery librarian is looking at it to, potentially paint discovery pathways or through our resources, any insights that can be gleaned on that. And for myself in our areas, usage areas. Yeah, v as granular as we can. So the question is, yeah, how granular is the user data? I want to say there's about 34 to 37 columns of data. Right now, I'm working with something that's like 24 million rows um, of user data. Of course, we have the OpenAthens information, and then all of the employee or student information as well. So, what I don't want is something that could potentially be personally identifying, but yeah, definitely undergrad, grad, faculty, staff. Postdoc is a bit difficult because we start to run into the issue of how UBC constructs its data profiles for people. And because they're actually listed as staff, so it gets a little bit uh, um, it loses that granularity at some point. So, but this is just a quick example I wanted to show. Nature journals, obviously we get those through COPPUL. Um, and, one of the things that I've started to look at is could we use this for targeted communications if we were ever to cancel something? And so, where are the employee departments that are, authenticating? This is fiscal year 23, 24, and student departments as well, using or summing up their authentication. And maybe I shouldn't have chosen nature. It's obviously a pretty popular resource. Probably not able to um, utilize this for targeted communications, but for certainly for some resources. And I already have for some of you might remember BioPsych that was offered through COPPUL a couple of years ago. So there was two departments that have been using it, and we're in discussion with them. Um, how do we merge these with counterstats? I think that's a project that NISO or has been brought to NISO. I think there's some communications there because on one side, Counter has the publisher granular information, and then we have the user granular information. I'll have to look for faculty emeriti. I know I don't think they get a different EduPerson attribute, so there might be a different way for us to look at that. Um, Using this for cancellations. Well, uh, that's why I've used it for the biopsych. That's potentially something that we might be looking at here. So. Um, there's a lot of other thoughts that I've had about it. There's other data sets at UBC. Is there an area where we could look at, a department that maybe doesn't have the best pass rate, and then look at the activity of that department within the Open Athens data set. Is it a high library access rate for electronic resources? Or if it's low, can we reallocate resources to this department to see if that pass rate increases, right? So just a lot of yeah, Jacqueline is sharing my pain about biopsych. but yeah, there's I think it's just really the beginnings of how we're going to start to use this data set. There's other Open Athens libraries that also have gone down this path as well. So, we're always interested if there are other libraries to connect with them and work through and Open Athens itself is interested in um, enhancing the data set that they can provide as well. So it's it's just the beginning as well.